Welcome, everybody, to the 8th episode of Unpacking Software from Chocolatey Software. Today, we'll be chatting about and giving our expert opinion on the latest news, software news, focusing on packaging, software deployment, and lifecycle management. We do this every Thursday, third Thursday of every month, should I say, at 4 p.m. UTC. We live stream this, but we also make this available very soon afterwards as a podcast as well, which you can download and listen to on your favourite podcast manager. We have another live stream on the first Thursday of each month called Product Spotlight, where we spotlight Chocolatey products, discuss releases, highlight features, and walk through tutorials and demos of Chocolatey products. To ensure you get notified of all the awesome Chocolatey content that we create, ensure you join a community hub on Discord. Subscribe to us on YouTube and click that notification bell. That's really important. And when you do that, you get notified when we produce content, when we stream, etc. You can also follow us on social media on Twitter or X, Mastodon, LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, and Twitch. You can find all of those links on our homepage, chocolatey.org. Scroll all the way to the bottom and you'll find those links there, or you'll find it in the description of wherever you found this content. We all want to make sure that we hear from you about the content that we're producing. Is it what you want to see or hear? Do you have ideas about what you'd like to see? Have your say at ch0.co/stream survey. And I'll put that on the screen as well just now, just so that you can get that link there. So that takes about 10 seconds to complete. We'd really appreciate it if you would complete that. There's only one mandatory question. That's just to rate the stream. The rest of it is optional. So if you could give us your say and give us your feedback, you can have your say in what content that we produce. My name is Paul Brodith, and I'm a technical engineering manager here at Chocolatey Software. Today, I'm joined by our principal software engineer, Gary Unpack, and our customer solutions manager, Stephen Valdinger. And I'll just bring them on stream now. There we go. Let's move everybody around. Awesome. So something a little bit different today. We're actually all at the Chocolatey head office here in Topeka in Kansas. So we're in different rooms, so there'll be no feedback, etc. But unusual for us all to get together and be in the same place. But here we are today. So let's kind of just crack on with what we're going to talk about today. And there's some interesting news today. Round about open source. We've got a couple of open source topics to discuss and some usual software news. But the kind of first one I think we want to talk about, and that's the biggest one, it appears Microsoft may finally be killing control panels today. What's this all about?
It seems like it. So this is one of those things that has been talked about and rumored for a really, really, really long time. But there's never been anything official from Microsoft. But now there's something in the support.microsoft site specifically around control panel exists for compatibility reasons, but you should try to use the settings app as the alternative because that's where things are migrating to. So they have finally come out and put something out that says, hey, all of this legacy stuff that's in control panel, we're going to migrate it into the settings app, but control panel is still there for compatibility reasons. And control panel, I didn't realize how old control panel was. I thought control panel was a Windows 3.1 edition, but no, it goes all the way back to Windows 1.0 back in the 80s. It has existed since pretty much the very beginning of Windows. So yeah, is it pretty long in the tooth? Maybe. Is there a lot of muscle memory involved in getting to things? Absolutely. I am very guilty myself of still going appwiz.cpl from the run box or firewall.cpl from the run box to open up the Windows firewall or add remove programs. It's going to take me a long time probably to break the habit of using those shortcuts. So as long as they don't pull those out from under me, fine. Like if that stuff can stay working forever, that'd be great. But yeah, the settings app is the new thing. They're finally officially going to kill control panel. Maybe it's time. I don't know. I think it's going to have mixed opinions from sysadmins everywhere. You know, because people like me that have been doing this stuff for a really, really long time and have a lot of muscle memory built up. But then, there's a lot of new technologists coming up now that the only thing they've known is the settings app. So it's probably time. But yeah, it's cool that they finally kind of officially put something out that it's going away.
I think I will miss it when it's got such a bit weird. Whenever I try to use the settings app in Windows 10 primarily, there's always something missing from it. I always try. I think I'll start there. I'll have a look, and I always end up back in the control panel because, again, a bit like muscle memory, you just know where everything is. You click, there it is.
It's
There.
just familiar.
Yeah, but I just find that it's more useful as well. A lot of the things that were in Windows 10, anyway, as I said, that's what I'm talking about. There was a lot of information there, but there wasn't a lot of things you could do with it. You then had to go in the control panel to do things. So it sounds like they're going to be changing that. But as you mentioned as well, that was what I think quite interesting was that Microsoft has never said publicly that it would be killing the control panel before, even though there's been lots of rumors about it. There's been nothing, but now they're kind of looking at that to migrate everything to settings. So things move on. Not always for the better, but maybe this will be one of the ones that is for the better. And talking about things that move on and is not always for the better. Apparently, AI worse than humans in every way. It's summarizing information and government trial finds. Gary, I know you had a look at this, but it's actually the Australian Security and Investments Commission that conducted or had a test conducted for them for that. What kind of happened there?
It's kind of just as you said. I mean, so Amazon were brought in to conduct a survey or a test for the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, and basically they asked AI to do a submission for a parliamentary inquiry, and they had AI generate the output as well as taking humans, so 10 humans to generate the report. And then they subsequently took each of those submissions and gave them to actual humans to review them. And what they found was that it was quite glaringly obvious that there were certain things that AI just wasn't able to do properly, which led them to summarize that the content generated by AI is just not up to snuff yet. So they went as far as saying in this kind of blind assessment that was carried out that the humans scored better and what was reviewed was scoring 81%, whereas the content generated by AIs came in at 47%. So it's a glaring difference. And a lot of the blind submitters, or the blind reviewers, sorry, actually provided feedback that said, look, it was kind of obvious that this was AI that wrote this. It wasn't a human that wrote this. It was AI that wrote this. And the upshot of it is, and this is kind of where I think I stand on AI, is that it has to be thought about as an augmentation to an existing piece of workflow. We're not at a point, in my opinion anyway, where we can take the output from an AI model and just use it straight away. It's an augmentation to your already to your workflow that you already have. So this was kind of the this report or this summary fit in with exactly how I think about AI. The other thing that I find myself doing for certain things, I find myself reading things as well now. And the first thing that I think sometimes is, was this written by AI? Is someone trying to fool me into thinking that they know something by having AI write it for them? So it's a strange world that we live in. Made worse. So as Paul said on the at the start, we're all in Topeka just now, and on the flight over, I ended up watching or rewatching the film Ex Machina, and where the whole premise of that film is, can someone decide whether this AI is actually passed the Turing test and be aware? So it was interesting to see that in the context of this article as well. It's I don't think we're there yet, obviously. But yeah, it was an interesting article and an interesting summary.
I think, as you said there, it should be a tool to augment and not replace human tasks. I think that there was recently there was a CEO of some company. I can't remember the name of the company. It was all over the social media verse. Who said that AI is going to start replacing, I think, software developers. He was talking about specifically. I mean, even from the headline, you can tell that that's complete nonsense. It's in the foreseeable future anyway. If you look at the current AI that we've got and the code it produces, there is no way that is going to be good enough to be able to produce things and replace human beings. Maybe in the future, it certainly will, but not now. And I was reading something just yesterday about there's a tool, an open source tool that was produced, and what it did was it went through and created language models, but like human language models, not AI language models, and it was for linguistics. And the actual maintainer of the project, and this is why it was the article I was reading, the post I was reading, was that they were shutting down the tool because they couldn't actually get decent information through the internet scraping that they were doing, and they were doing it purely for statistics reasons. They weren't kind of keeping it because a large part of the internet now is AI generated, and they've seen a significant change in the statistics that they've been getting based on the amount of content that's been produced. I think one of the words they used was delve is used a lot more now than it was just like 2 or 3 years ago, because AI models are now generating, this content using words like that. So they've said we can't get any meaningful statistics anymore, so we're just closing the whole thing down.
Gotcha.
So AI has its place, but it's at the moment it seems to be producing more noise than it's producing helpful information. So, and this kind of study certainly underscores that. But in the future, potentially different. But Terminator's not going to be the door anytime soon. I don't think.
So Corey's. I'm curious now in the chat. Corey's suggesting that I mispronounced Ex Machina. How am I meant to pronounce Ex Machina?
Ex Machina.
I always just I saw it as machine with an A. Is how
that's how I've always said it, Gary. So I'm saying it wrong too, apparently.
Is it Corey's actually Canadian though? So they see it.
I mean, it might be
something to do with it.
Machine A is probably how he says it.
Ex Machina. Machina is what I don't know.
Ex Machina.
Machina is how I'm sticking with that. It's
a
hill. It's a nutcake hill that I'll die on. It's fine. It's fine.
Okay. Yes. Off on a slight tangent there. We're going to move on to some Chocolatey news. So over the last, or since we had the last Unpacking Software last month. So as I mentioned, we do this on the third Thursday of every month. We've had a couple of blog posts, and I think I want to get kind of Gary and Stevie just to pick up on that. Gary, it's actually one that you'd written, was about exporting Chocolatey packages. Do you want to pick that up? Talk a bit about that.
Sure, I can do that. I mean, so the concept of exporting the currently installed Chocolatey packages that you've got installed on a machine is something that has been around for quite a while now. But prior to having an actual export command, people had various PowerShell scripts that would do provide the information that they needed. So it was clear that Chocolatey as a tool, there was a desire to have that functionality. So effectively what it does is either through Chocolatey GUI, there is an export button within Chocolatey GUI, or through the Choco export command, you can get a standardized XML file that lists out all of the packages that are currently on your machine. So you might wonder why that's useful, but I mean, the primary use case is, let's say you've got a machine with all the packages that you want installed on it, and you get a new machine. You want to take all of the packages from your current machine and move it over to the new machine and just kick off the installation of all of those packages. So that's essentially what the Chocolatey export command does. So you'd run Choco export, you would get a packages.config file, and then you take that packages.config config file onto another machine, and then you would simply run Choco install and provide it the path to that packages.config file. And Chocolatey CLI will then just run through all of those packages and get them installed. So it's a really, really simple way to move from one machine to another. The exciting part about the Choco export command is that there's actually a lot of functionality that I'm looking to add to it in the near future. That includes some community contributions that already exist for it. So, for example, the ability to when you're exporting the list of packages, to also export the arguments that were used at the point of installation. That's information that Chocolatey CLI already has, and I want to bring that into the export command. So again, when you move onto another machine, you can include that information too. Now, there's also other things that I want to see included within the Choco export command. I'm not at the point where I'm ready to start talking about that, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to, but watch this space, because I think I have some ideas around what that Choco export command could be used for, and the functionality that could be provided. So I'm excited to talk about that when that comes time. So, but yeah, Choco export. It's I like to point out, because I wrote it, the functionality actually existed within Chocolatey GUI before it existed in Chocolatey CLI. It was something that we as a Chocolatey GUI team saw that there was a need for, and we added that functionality in a Chocolatey GUI before Chocolatey CLI. So a little bit of trivia there for people.
Awesome. So I'll put the blog post actually back on the screen just now. It's also in the chat, so if you're watching us live, it's actually in the chat as well. If you're listening to us on the podcast, the link will actually be in the description of where you find the podcast as well. There was another blog post as well that we put out. It's one of our Back to Basics series of live streams that we did. And that Back to Basics is really about taking Chocolatey products, taking Chocolatey functionality, and going really, as the name suggests, back to basics and starting from the beginning. You know, what is a Chocolatey package? How do you create Chocolatey packages? How do you update Chocolatey packages? And you'll find all of that information actually on our blog as well. So that's blog.chocolatey.org. And you can go on there, and there's actually a tag for Back to Basics, and you'll find all of the information for the Back to Basics in there. But one of those is, what's Chocolatey Central Management? And I'm going to turn that over to Stevie, because it was Chris, Stevie, maybe your team, who did that blog post, and he also did that stream as well. So tell us about that one.
Yeah, so it was actually the first time Chris ever led a stream for us. He did a really good job on it. But the blog post is a really, really nice summary of that stream, where we talk about what central management is in terms of what does it do for you. This is our single pane of glass reporting platform for seeing what packages are installed where and whether they're outdated or not. And then also being able to deploy updates to those packages, new packages, run custom PowerShell code against the endpoints as part of a deployment. All of that stuff is outlined in that blog post, and he goes further and also links out to the documentation on how to install central management as well. There's also further information, not particularly in the blog post, but he links to it in terms of the usage of central management as well. So we've got a bunch of API examples out on our doc site as well. So if you're interested in checking out central management, you can go read the blog post, and then that will link off to our doc site where you can find all of the information about central management. We've got a lot of screenshots in the documentation to give you a peek into the look and feel of central management, what that's going to look like, how you can use it. It's a really, really user-friendly interface, which now includes dark mode, which is great. But yeah, that he did a really, really nice job on that blog post. It's a pretty good one. It's a nice overview.
Yeah, Chris did, as you mentioned. It was Chris's, I think it was the first product demo stream that you did. We did interview Chris. I can't remember when it was, Gary. It was
It's been a
myself.
while ago.
Yeah, Chris has been with us for a little while now. It's not like yesterday, but yeah, we did an interview with Chris on there as well, and that was a great stream as well. We had a lot of fun on that one. So you can go check that out. The link again is on the screen if you're watching us live. If you're listening to us on the podcast, it will be in the description there as well. But blog.chocolatey.org is where you find all of our blog posts. And awesome work, Chris, for that stream. Thank you. So moving on to some open source news. Microsoft is donating the Mono project to the Wine team. Now, as a long-term Linux user, I really thought this was fantastic news. The Wine team are actually picking that up. Wine is a fantastic piece of software doesn't get enough praise. I think it's not perfect by any means, but it does a phenomenal job of allowing you to run Windows software on Linux. And it was really excited to see that the Mono project has actually been donated to the Wine team. Gary, you had to look at this. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
I did. I mean, it's one of these rabbit holes that you can step into, and there's lots of history in there. I mean, the Mono project has been around since 2001. So as a product or as a piece of software, it has been around a long, long time, and it's gone through different stewardships, as the blog post alludes to, over that time. So it was originally created by Miguel de Icaza, who now or was working for Microsoft, but no longer works at Microsoft. Miguel created a company based off of Mono, and then it got taken over by Novell, and then everything that was Mono got pulled into Microsoft proper, and now we've got what's being referred to as .NET, which it was previously called .NET Core, which has been pulling all of the stuff that was in the Mono project into .NET. But it's a fascinating history. I mean, I remember trying to run at the time an old school ASP.NET application using Mono running on Linux, because I can't remember the reasons why I wanted to, but it was just something I could hack on. And there was an implementation of the membership provider that used MySQL, and it was all going to be running through Mono, and it was all just amazing. And then I promptly threw it away because I ran it just on Windows because it was easier. But it does what it does. I mean, it is as a project. I guess we need to talk a little bit about what it is. I mean, it's an implementation of the .NET specification that is intended to run on operating systems other than Windows. So there was an implementation for Linux, for Mac, and then all these other things that you wouldn't think about, like watches and TVs and all these things that you could run software on that would never have been possible before. So back in the day, there was a little bit of, let's call it, disruption. And I'm not sure if Microsoft initially liked the fact that there was a Mono implementation because they wanted everything to run on Windows. But we've come full circle now, where Microsoft now has a complete implementation of the .NET runtime across multiple operating systems. And they haven't contributed to the Mono project or there hasn't been a release of it for a while now. As a major release, there hasn't been one since back in 2019, with the last patch release being February 2024. So they haven't had a need to update it anymore because they've got their newer implementation that is .NET. So to see it being taken over by someone who will need to make use of it, because my understanding is the Wine project already has their own kind of copy or fork of Mono to do what they need it to do to provide the functionality that they have. But what they're looking to do is to bring this fork of Mono into their system so that they can keep it up to date and keep adding more features to it. So yeah, there's a lot of history there. And it isn't. I went and had a look at the GitLab repository, and it's not as though they've just brought it over and done nothing with it. There's been consistent commits into it for various things since it got brought over. So yeah, it's fascinating to see what it'll be fascinating to see where it goes. So
yeah, I think it's in good hands.
Yes,
yeah. they'll certainly keep it going. There is an announcement on the Mono Project homepage, so it's just www.mono-project.com, and they're happy to announce that the organisation will be taken over, and you can see that on there. So that is awesome.
They did mention as well that on there that the original kind of mono repository on GitHub will be archived. So the new home is actually, it's on GitLab. So the new wine mono project is over in GitLab, and the GitHub one will be archived. But what they have said is that they're going to keep the binaries around for at least up to 4 years. So if you are relying on those binaries, they will still be available. But then I can only imagine that once they've got all the CI builds running on the new project, that there will be new builds coming out. But that's one of the things that's currently on the roadmap, is to get GitLab CI running for the project so that they can generate some output assemblies.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah, you can find out more about that, mono-project.com. Elasticsearch is apparently open source again. If anybody remembers, Elasticsearch took their, I was going to say closed source. They didn't take it closed source. They actually put a license in place that stopped commercial entities such as AWS, because that seemed to be what they were targeting at the time, from using it and making money off of it. But they have, they're very, very excited. If you read the blog post, they're incredibly excited that apparently they wanted to do a dance. That's how excited they were about making Elasticsearch open source again. So, Gary, you had to look at that one as well.
Oh, you broke up a little bit there, Paul, for me. I don't know if that happened for everyone, but can you say that last part again for me? Because I didn't catch what you said.
Sure. So Elasticsearch is going open source again, and you've had a look at what they've actually changed there. I think they changed the license back to an open source based license. Gary keeps breaking up.
And who's a CTO of Elastic. So read again. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to assume that everyone can hear me. So the CTO of Elasticsearch, Shay Bannon, wrote a blog post licensing, and also why to having an open source license applied to it. And basically what it came down to is they had a dispute with AWS where, as far as Elasticsearch was combined, the products that were being offered by AWS were making it unclear as to whether you were using Elasticsearch or you weren't using Elasticsearch. And at least from the Elasticsearch perspective, they tried everything that they could with AWS, and the only reason that they changed the license originally was to kind of force the hand of AWS to change the way that they were doing things. And according to this blog post, that has now been taken care of, to the point that AWS are now they've kind of created their own fork. They've changed the branding. They've made it clear what it is and what it isn't. They actually named Elasticsearch as their AWS provider of or contributor of the year. So they're still happy together, although there has been this dispute. And according to Shay Bannon, they've now been able to re-add the or add a new license. That's the other thing to make to call out here, is that although there was a change to the license, this new change is to add an additional fully OSI compliant license to the Elasticsearch source code. So if you want to use that license, you can. If you want to use the other license that's already exists, you can. You've got basically the choice of 3 licenses that you can adhere to when using Elasticsearch and Kibana as well. The interesting thing out of all of this that I some of the parts that I took away from the blog post especially was, or the way it was written, I thought was really well done. They actually broke it out into a section that said, okay, we know that this has happened. We know that there are going to be trolls. We know that there's going to be naysayers. So what they've done is they kind of preempted the statements that would have come out and then explained why that comment either does or doesn't apply. So I thought it was a really well-worded blog post, especially because there are going to be people who going to say, well, you're just doing it for this reason and you're just doing it for that reason. They kind of got ahead of the curve a little bit because they knew that was going to happen. So what do I think? I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I am a proponent of open source, but at the end of the day, open source developers, open source maintainers, open source companies still need to make money. And what they felt was that AWS were not making that possible for them. So they had to make a change. And now they've been able to come back the other side, and they're now in a position to apply this AGPL license to their source code again. So yeah, it's all good all round, to be honest. So I'm happy to see it happen. I'm a user of Elasticsearch. I do enjoy the product and enjoy working with it. So yeah, I'm happy to see it come to the or land up the way that they have. So yeah, happy for it.
Cool. So yeah, as you mentioned, hopefully AWS and Elasticsearch are best of friends again. That would be good, because I think it benefits everybody when the organisations like that can use the products to provide them to their customers. We're going to jump on to some security and privacy news now. This was one that was kind of just after, I think it was our last live stream, Unpacking Software live stream. Toyota confirms customer and employee data stolen, but the breach was at a third party rather than Toyota themselves. This was interesting for me, but I'm going to let Stevie pick up on this one. I'm actually going to disappear off screen because I have to go and get my laptop charger, so I will be gone for a second. Stevie, you looked into this. You want to pick this one up?
I did, yeah, and I think I remember hearing about this, but it was interesting to read up. It seems like it was a relatively limited scope of data and also customers, and they've already notified anybody that was impacted by the breach. So if you're a Toyota owner and you're concerned, if you haven't heard from them, you're good. That your data wasn't part of this breach. But it's something that I fear is going to become more and more commonplace as the auto industry changes and keeps implementing more and more technology into the cars we drive, right? Like, we roll around in supercomputers anymore, particularly with the higher end, the EV models. Like, look at a Tesla with all the like Sentry cameras that they have around and the big heads up displays, and there's all this tech inside of these things, and a server somewhere has to talk to that stuff to keep firmware updates, software updates, all this stuff happy. So I don't think we've heard the last of it by any means. We're probably just starting. So yeah, it's going to be really, really critical, I think, in the next 3, 5, 10 years to make sure that we're holding, like, now even auto manufacturers accountable for the data that they're collecting and storing, and making it easy for folks to opt in and out of that data collection stuff. I would like to see the data collection stuff be off by default and just opt in for absolutely everything. But I also am fully aware that I wear a tinfoil hat most of the time. So I'm not the general public for sure in terms of that. But that I get annoyed that my iPhone tells me where I parked my car when I walk away from it. Like, yeah, it's kind of convenient, but at the same time, it's kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies too. And I didn't know that they were doing that sort of stuff either. Like, I don't know why they need to know that stuff. Maybe if it's a really big sporting event or something, or the zoo, like, where the parking lot's huge and you don't take a picture where you're parked or whatever. Like, it's got merit. It does have merit. I'm not going to say it's a completely bad idea, but at the same time, no thanks. I don't know, but I really do think that we're just at the forefront of this type of breach. We're going to hear more and more about this stuff. As we keep putting technology more and more into everything, really. I mean, you have to worry about your toaster nowadays, for God's sake.
I'm kind of with you on the why do you need to store every piece of data for me? The car location stuff, this blows my mind. I know why they do it, but so when you're driving a Toyota car, it now reports back where your car is, all over the world to central servers. Why on earth did Toyota need that information beyond being able to monetize it? So you pay tens of thousands of dollars for a car, and they still have to make more money off of you by monetizing where you park your car, for example, where you shop, where your sister lives, or whatever, because you're driving there. Why do these companies have to constantly suck information from us and use us as a product to generate more money? It's the same with things like Windows now as well. You know, where they're putting ads into Windows. I think Microsoft seemed to forget that we pay for Windows. Windows isn't free. But yet they still have to generate more money from things. And Microsoft's not the only one. I appreciate them picking on Microsoft. Apple do the same thing, and Google does the same thing. Android's not free. I wish people would get this through their heads. You pay for Android by increased prices for your hardware. These things are not free. You're paying for it, but yet they still want to generate money by sucking all of your data, monetizing it, and selling it to companies, potentially sleazy companies that want to market you all sorts of nonsense. It really boils my blood with this kind of stuff. And then we find out that because Toyota's been been gathering this information, that someone has then stolen it. That's where the stealing part came from. But if they didn't gather it in the first place, they wouldn't need to notify their customers, and people wouldn't have to start, taking steps potentially of making, But if that information gets out there that it's a person that's potentially vulnerable, maybe some politician, people that are potentially vulnerable to that information gets out there. It's dangerous. It's not just you're going to go and visit your sister. It's that now there's more dangerous things going on out there because they have that information. These things always snowball, and it really gets me. Really gets me. And the problem is us, because we accept it. That's the big problem. We just that's the norm now, rather than avoiding Toyota and their products. But then if they're all doing it, what do you just walk everywhere? Suddenly, or do we go back to old cars?
That's the problem, right? Like, this is not. I mean, yeah, we're talking about Toyota because they're the ones that had the breach, but it could very easily be any other brand tomorrow. Like, they're all guilty. They're all doing it.
Yeah.
And I think we're just old. Like, we're old school, right? Like, I grew up in a time where I could ride in the front seat of the truck without a car seat, and I'm still here. Like,
I don't know if we're just old. I just think that there's nothing but an unpacked software without a rant from Paul. But it's that these organizations, but it would be different, for example, if, and taking Toyota again as the example, that you bought a car from Toyota and they responsibly gathered information because you'd opted into it, for example, and then they didn't monetize it and they didn't sell it to anybody. But the problem is these companies cannot be trusted. They've shown time and time again that the information that you provide them with for convenience, you mentioned, for example, Apple will tell you where you've parked your car. And that would be great if that's where it stopped, but it never does. They then find ways to monetize that and sell your data to somewhere else. And because they're gathering so much data as well, it then disappears into the internet verse because someone's stolen it. These companies cannot be trusted, and that is fundamentally the problem.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stop.
Yeah, there are definitely good reasons to have it, right? I won't disagree. that it's not a good thing in some regards. They collect stuff. Like if they were collecting performance data on how my car was operating and use that data for the sole purpose of making next year's model more performant and efficient and better, go ahead. That's fine. Whatever. It's not tied to me. It's all tied to this car and how I drive it. So they could collect the data points on how different people are driving the vehicle to make it better, safer, whatever. That's fine. And if that's all they were doing, I'm cool with it. And to be fair, I think there is a good argument for location-based data collection, particularly with the elderly. Because, if you are an older individual and you're on the starting side of, dementia or, God forbid, Alzheimer's or like any of those really terrible diseases where your mind starts to slip, that location-based data could be super helpful, right? But again, that's an edge case. Like that's a good use for it, but still.
But as Paul said, that's where you would knowingly opt into that data
Opt
being
into it,
collected because you
exactly.
want to have that, as opposed to it just being the default. So it's
Exactly.
But,
Yeah. And if that's, as you said, Stevie, that's where it stopped. For example, you mentioned the performance data. If they gather performance data on the engine, let's say, for example, and then next year's model will make it better. But again, what they do is they gather performance data and then say Stevie's got what we would call a kind of lead foot, i.e., you're quite heavy in the accelerator. Oh, let's sell that information to gas companies around about his area, or garages around about the area, because the harder you push your vehicle, the more likely you're going to need repairs, and so that's what they do, and then they monetize that. And it unfortunately never stops at the good thing where, we're going to make the engine better next year. Awesome. It's not what you do. And let's all wear tinfoil hats, because I think that we need to. I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means, but I think we need to. But it can be fashionable. Like your fashionable chocolate hat that you're not wearing.
I can't, but all right, the hat doesn't fit over the headphones, all right?
You could just wear it and then take it off and let everyone see.
I could set it on top of my head.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, let's move on. Let's keep a tinfoil hat on, but let's move on. And talking about monetizing things, Mozilla removes the telemetry service called Adjust from its mobile Firefox versions. So people are not aware that Mozilla actually purchased an ad company. And what they've done is they then added into Firefox providing that information back with regards to your browsing habits. But they provided anonymized data apparently. But the thing is that they switched that on by default. Again, we were talking about that opt-in, opt-out thing. And I've always said that if you collect information without that consent, that's the wrong thing. You should be giving people an opt-out, an opt-in to it, and then they would opt into it, and then you're collecting data with consent. People have consented to you doing that. But what they do is they collect data without consent, and then go, but you've got the option to opt out. Well, why don't you just let us opt in the first place? Because people won't opt in. Yeah, there's a reason people won't opt in, because again, you guys cannot be trusted to do things in a responsible manner. And by doing what you've done, i.e. collecting the information without consent, you've just reinforced what I've just said. But they've removed it from mobile Firefox versions. I don't know why they haven't removed it from all Firefox versions, but they've certainly removed it from the mobile ones. So, if you're using Firefox Mobile and you haven't moved away from it yet, then, it's a little bit more privacy friendly. Now that they've removed that. So, and also just sticking to that, this is, I don't even know where to start with. Microsoft's controversial Windows recall feature is coming back in October to Windows Insider versions. They did say they were going to bring it back, so that was fine. What happened was they brought out Windows recall. There was all sorts of uproar, I think is probably the best description. People were not happy bunnies about it all. People also found there was potential problems with the vulnerabilities, etc. So Microsoft took it away, and now they're bringing it back in October. But it's not going to be optional, apparently. So what happened was it would be opt-in by default, Microsoft had said. But you cannot uninstall it. It's still going to be that you can disable it, which kind of suggests to me it's going to be on by default. And then you have to disable it. I would have to confirm that. I don't actually know. But you cannot uninstall it at all. So an article I was reading kind of suggested, well, because it only runs on Copilot Plus PCs, and everybody's rushing out the door to buy them, obviously, those kind of PCs might be blacklisted by organizations because you're going to have something that's a potential security and privacy threat, depending on what organization. For example, maybe the government. You don't want features like this potentially being turned on. Even you've disabled it, but it's not gone; it's still there. So they're suggesting that some of those Copilot Plus PCs could just be blacklisted and people are not going to buy them, which I think is perfectly valid. But Microsoft again reiterates that security is its top priority for that. So, but it's likely to go general release for everybody. So if you're using Windows 11. You can get the benefit of being watched 24/7 when you're using your PC by some artificial intelligence, taking screenshots of everything that you do in 2025 at some point. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be a grand day for us all, I think, and for the human race to move forward. So yeah, get your Copilot Plus PC today. Okay, so I need to stop this. We've got a nice thing just to finish up with. Blue Sky. I don't know, Gary. You've got a Blue Sky account, don't you?
I have a Blue Sky account. Yes, I'm not an avid user of it, but then I'm also not an avid user of most social media systems anymore. Whereas before I was. Now I just dip in and out. But yeah, I can say I have a Blue Sky account. Yes.
Stevie, do you have a Blue Sky account? Oh, I can't hear you, Stevie.
No, I can't hear him either.
I forgot I was on mute. The mute button is important. I have a Blue Sky account just so that, I wanted to make sure I could get Stevie Kister. But I've never done anything at all on Blue Sky. Not a single thing.
Did both of you know that Chocolatey has a Blue Sky account?
I did.
I did know that, yes.
That's amazing. It's on the screen. And if you're listening to it on a podcast, it'll be on the description as well. But what I really liked about Blue Sky, and I'm not an avid user of social media at all. I do the old Mastodon thing. I'm completely off Twitter and X now for quite some time for various different reasons. But I do have a Blue Sky account as well. But what I really liked about Blue Sky, and we've talked about this a couple of times on the live stream, and obviously the podcast as well. Did you know that the Unpacking Software is actually a podcast as well? Just putting that out there. They're providing features like moderation features. They're actually looking into trying to address some of the problems with social media, particularly to do with harassment, toxicity, as I mentioned, moderation, that kind of thing, just to make it a better place for everybody to be, and they've got some new anti-toxicity features that are coming up. They've written a blog post about that, where you can detach quotes from posts. So if you do a post and someone quotes it, and you, for whatever reason, you don't want that to happen, then you can detach those quotes from your post, which I think is a really nice idea. Yeah. And also, you can hide replies to your posts, either from yourself or everyone. So again, someone replies with maybe something nasty or whatever, then you can actually hide that reply. Again, just for yourself, because you just don't want to see it, or you can actually hide it from everybody as well. And priority notifications can now be enabled, so you only receive notifications from people you follow, which is really good.
Yeah, I agree.
It just cuts that noise out. So I just think, while I know that I actually don't think Blue Sky will ever be a thing. And it's disappointing that is the case. I just think they're too late to the party. I hope I'm wrong, but I do think they're doing some really nice work and some good work around about trying to tackle some of these things. They've done things like block lists as well, and people can create block lists, and you can kind of jump onto those block lists and all that kind of stuff. I think it's just a great idea, and they're at least attempting to do something about it. You might want to criticize some of the stuff they're doing, or it's maybe not effective or what, but they're at least trying. And I think they've got to be applauded for that, at least. Okay. So just moving on, we've only got, what have we got left? 9 minutes. We were going to, nope, we've covered that. So one of the things I want to talk about was kind of a few things that are going to come up or have come up since our last live stream. I'm just going to run over them quickly. Guys, please jump in if you've got anything you want to add to them. The Internet Archive, Google Search has actually added it in. So when you search for something now, if there's a page that's been archived, you can actually go back into the Internet Archive from the Google Search page and be able to see that in there. I think that's fantastic, not just because you can see the archive pages, but because it highlights the Internet Archive to a lot of people who won't even know it exists.
Yeah.
I think the Internet Archive is going to be one of those things that is going to disappear at some point, and we're all going to miss it, and we don't realise how important it is. So getting a bit of exposure for that is fantastic. I hope Google is giving them some money as well. They do give Mozilla, I believe, $500 million a year. I think it's that. Maybe that's wrong. But hopefully they're going to give the Internet Archive some money as well for that. I think that would be fantastic. And you can donate to the Internet Archive as well. Just jump on their page. I donate every month, and I just think it's worthwhile. So even you spend a few dollars, that would be fantastic to keep that service going. They do a lot more than just archiving web pages.
We were just talking about it the other day because we were going back through the chocolatey.org website to see the different ways and branding that's going to go to, and you do that through the Wayback Machine. So it's an entirely useful bit of kit, and we're lucky to have it, as you say. So.
Bring back beige is what we were looking for. So the old chocolatey.org website was a little bit beige. So
little beige. Okay.
Okay, a lot of beige. I was trying not to put people off. Unity as well. I don't know if you remember Unity changed its. Actually, I got a laugh. But Unity changed its contracts, its licensing, whatever it was, so that when a game was installed, the developer would pay. Now, there was kind of tiers and things like that, so that's a simplistic version. But there was a complete uproar about that because it was going to cost just small developers a lot of money. All of a sudden, but it wasn't like, oh, we're going to do it going forward. You can stop using a framework, you won't pay them. No, it was like, no, we're going to make this, go back to so far. So people, even that they'd used it, hadn't, updated the game or brought the game together for a number of years, they were still going to have to pay that install fee as well. And then there was questions like, well, what if they reinstall things? And they were getting charged for that, even though they were charged install fees. So there was all sorts of stuff round about it. But they have dropped that. I believe that when they brought that out, a month later, the CEO resigned. I think it was a month later. So they have a new CEO, but they have had it for a while. So they're actually dropping that. But I think the damage there is done. Unity is a company, I think it's safe to say, couldn't be trusted to not do this again in the future. And I know a lot of organizations that actually moved off of using the Unity platform and using Unreal Engine instead. So, that'd be disappointing if they disappear and the only thing left is Unreal Engine. But you've got I can never pronounce this. Is it Godot? But it's not pronounced that way. It's the alternative. It's the open source engine.
I know what you're talking about, but I'm bad at pronunciations, as we've already discussed in this.
I don't think you pronounce a T or something like that. But anyway, that's an open source alternative, and it really got a lot of support when Unity did the license change. So hopefully that support will continue, and people just don't jump back to Unity. And we were talking earlier on there about the Microsoft recall feature, where they were kind of take those screenshots. They just patched a Copilot vulnerability that could leak data as well. It was they were injecting stuff into the prompt. Copilot prompt, and it was leaking data out of that. So that's been patched. But that's been around since January, which was strange. But I think they've just, as they've gone forward, they have patched it bit by bit to make sure it's no longer as vulnerable as it was. And just on Patch Tuesday, Microsoft's addressed 79 vulnerabilities. That was Patch Tuesday, was just last week, and that was 6 critical and 7 important fixes in 4 0 days. So it'll be important if you run a Windows system to get that patched and up to date. And Adobe's patched 28 vulnerabilities on there as well, and that includes 19 critical severity vulnerabilities. So please get your Adobe and your Microsoft stuff patched. Before we kind of wrap up Gary, Stevie, anything you want to say? I'm just going to jump onto the one event that we've got coming up, but anything on any of that?
I wanted to mention a vulnerability that I saw uh, just last week, I think it was, on Twitter, and a couple friends of myself had a conversation about it. There is a remote code execution vulnerability in certain ways of doing like PS remoting that is particularly nasty, and there's a lot of stuff that needs to go on to make this happen. But a really popular module from Fred Weinman, the PS framework module that he produces that a lot of other modules use, was vulnerable to this thing because of the way he constructed it. And I just saw on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, I think yesterday or really, really recently, that he's fixed that. And there is a new version of the PS Framework module out. So if you want to, or if you are using PS Framework, it would be a really good idea to go ahead and update that module in your environments to patch that. Yeah, some security researcher put a blog post out in the bait. There's a link to a talk and all kinds of stuff on it. Paul, I'll try and dig that up. I just thought about it while you were talking and asking for suggestions there. So I'll dig that info up and we can include it in the show notes for this one.
Awesome. I just actually looked up the Chocolatey package, Stevie, for PS Framework because I'm the maintainer of that. And the last version was submitted on the 17th of September. Will that be Tuesday?
Tuesday,
and that's now been approved. So that's available on the Chocolatey Community Repository. So if you get your PS Framework PowerShell module from the Chocolatey Community Repository, just do a Choco upgrade and you'll get the latest version of that. Hopefully that's the one that is being fixed.
Yeah.
So there's a more up-to-date one. We'll get that updated. Awesome. Gary, anything before we finish?
No, don't think so.
Okay.
No, not at all.
So there's one event we've got left that Chocolate will be involved in. That's PowerShell Conference EU MiniCon, and that's on the 15th of October, and it's on the platform that's just completely escaped me. Stevie, what's the platform that runs on?
Gather.
Yeah.
Gather, that's the word. Yeah, so if you like Gather, it's actually really cool. So they've designed the environment there, and you can, Chocolate's got a booth there as well. You'll be able to go along, see some talks using Gather, and also be able to visit the Chocolatey virtual booth there as well, and potentially speak to the team. So we're going to close up for today. So thank you, Gary and Stevie. We're all together in the office today, but it was we're all in separate rooms. But it was a great stream. Thank you. And just to everybody watching, this is the first season of our Unpacking Software live stream. So please let us know what you think about it. I'm going to put the link on the screen again, but I will spell it out for people on a podcast. So that's the link there for the survey. So the survey is available at C for cat, H for Harry 0.co. Why are you? Okay, Gary's invading my space there. That's just to prove that me and Gary are in the same office. ch0.co/stream survey. Please complete that. It only takes about 10 seconds. As I said earlier on, there's one mandatory question, and that is, rate the stream, give it a number, and a slider. The rest of it is optional, so really appreciate that. And it just tell us, is it the right format? Is it the right length? Do you have any ideas what you'd like to see? Just complete that stream survey form. That would be great. And to ensure you're notified about all the great content from Chocolatey Software, ensure you join our community hub on Discord. Subscribe to us on YouTube and click the notification bell. Very, very important. You can also follow us on Twitter or X, Mastodon, LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, and Twitch. We're on all the things. You can find the links for all of that, chocolatey.org. Scroll all the way to the bottom and you'll see the links there, or in the description wherever you found this content. Join our next live stream I haven't written the date down for that one. It is on the first Thursday of next month, which is the 3rd of October. So that is a product spotlight. Join us there on Twitch or YouTube. We don't put that one out as a podcast. We're not sure what we're going to do yet, but watch social medias and you'll get all the information for that then. So we hope to see you there. Same bat time, same bat channel. Thank you very much for joining us. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.